These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed.
Saturday will mark 20 years since the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Of the nearly 3,000 people who died that day, 7 had ties to Oklahoma.
This is a live look at Tulsa's BOK Tower. It is designed by the same architect who planned the World Trade Center and is very similar in design.
For the families of those killed in New York, at the Pentagon, and in the field in southern Pennsylvania, reminders of their loved ones are all around them. We hear from 2 of those families tonight in an Oklahoma Zone original.
Music. Still.
For Hugh and Cindy Rice, some reminders are just too much.
To this day, I do not play music. I cannot do it. Makes me too sad.
Their son David loved music, especially the sounds of Africa, where he studied on a Fulbright scholarship.
I tell our grandchildren they have the only grandmother in Oklahoma City that listens to the sports animal.
David Rice was on the 104th floor of the South World Trade Center Tower on September 11th, 2001, training to lead an investment company. He called his parents that morning after a plane hit the North Tower.
He said, "There's pandemonium, they won't let us out."
He said, "It's beyond my control."
An apparent direct hit by terrorists leaves Americans horrified over the unprecedented attacks and a devastating loss of life.
Days later, another phone call would change the Rices' lives forever. This time, it was a New York City police detective on the line.
When he called, I said, "I think I know why you're calling. Before you start, I want to thank you for your policemen and firemen who came to Oklahoma City to help us out when we had the bombing of the Murrah building."
David's body was one of the first identified in the days after the tragedy.
An Oklahoma City family has learned their son's tragic fate.
Effie Milam would have to wait a few more days until she found out what happened to her son, Major Ronald Milam, who was working inside the Pentagon.
This national tragedy is touching the lives of a Green Country family as they await word of a loved one.
I still believe that he was alive because they didn't find him for a week. I just kind of felt that he was out helping people get out.
Effie was teaching in her Muskogee High School classroom when she heard about the attacks.
I was writing on the board, and one of the teachers came in and told me to turn my TV on, and the plane had hit the Pentagon.
Ron Milam was a proud Muskogee rougher, a standout student and athlete in high school, the kind of teenager who would give away his gym shoes to help another student make the basketball team.
He always said, all I want is my $165 tennis shoes. And so I had bought him a pair, and then he didn't have them. He was always about doing something for somebody.
I'm thankful that Ron was my brother for 29 years of my life.
Steve Milam doesn't have to look far for reminders of his brother.
Watching sports sometimes, he loved basketball. Obviously, he played basketball. And then just being around my mom, of course, she talks about him a lot.
For these families, the most vivid reminders aren't in the buildings named in honor of their loved ones, or in the letters of support from leaders, or even in the pictures that line the walls of their homes. The best reminders are in the faces of those who are living.
He looks like David, and he probably is going to act like David.
Like Hugh and Cindy's youngest grandchild, or the son born just months after Ron's death, Ronald Milam Jr.
Like a clone of him, I look at him and I see Ron.
And I was telling Ron Jr., I said, "You're a lot like him, so laid back."
And these days, being reminded doesn't hurt the way it used to.
The healing started taking place, and when I look at his pictures now, I think about the fun things that he did.
Where there was the loss, there was a gift.
I just always have felt like we were lucky that we lived where we did.
One of the memorials here in their home state is this steel beam from one of the World Trade Center towers on display at Washington Irving Park in Bixby. It's intended to connect people to the past and to try to make sure people don't forget what happened 20 years ago. Both families say their faith is also a connection to their loved one's loss.
He really took his religion seriously, and I think that says a lot about him. He was very generous and caring.
He got very strong in his faith, so I noticed such a change in him. I know where he is, And so I rest in that.
While they've learned to cope with the loss,
When I look at this picture, I think about, you were so funny.
the memories serve as a lasting reminder of those who are gone and of the goodness in people.
People, American people, are really good at heart, especially in Oklahoma and New York. I think when you have a tragedy like the Murrah building or 9/11, you find that out.
Hugh and Cindy Rice still live in Oklahoma City. Effie Milam has retired to the Dallas area where her son Steve lives.